Hello, viewers and listeners. This is the Henderson Real News Show. Organize, don't criticize. Every time you hear or see the Henderson Real News Show, we're going to have the same topic, folks. Organize, don't criticize. The problem is, and as you know, I specialize on black issues, black concerns, and problems and solutions to black problems worldwide. I'm not concerned too much about what happens just in Mississippi, the South, the United States. I'm concerned about what black people do all over the world. I am of the opinion, and you know it too, that with all the black people in the world and so-called colored people, which makes up about 2/3 of the population of the world on the 7 continents, that there is no reason why black people and so-called people of color should not be controlling their lives from birth to death. That 1/3 of the people are suffering in the world, and 90% of those are so-called people of color. And today I'm going to give you some general and then some specific ideas that you can deal with, that can help you change your life, your status, your family, and your community, if you want to do something about it. I want you to be very, very aware of the fact that black people worldwide don't have but 6 years to change their status from an outcast, a member of a permitted underclass, to a real citizen of America or in America and the world. If you are considered an outcast by your Constitution, if you are hated as a person or human being by a lot of the rulers in your country, if you have been told through the constitutions, the histories, the guidelines, and all the other documents that determine the destiny of the citizens, that you are at the bottom, that's why I always say, if you've been told that through the written record, you have to believe it, whether it's true or not. And that's why I'm telling you today that what I share with you, you must consider it. And if you believe anything I tell you, and all of these things that I will be discussing are based on facts, I want you to do something about it. And if you don't believe what I share with you, you just wait until after December the 31st, 2029, and you're going to see where black people are going to be in America and in the world. I want you to understand that before we move forward, I just must share something about our underwriter so you can get in contact with us later on, and then I'll get into the real news and tell you how important it is to organize, starting with yourself. Now let's look at our underwriter today. That's Action Leadership Institute. They're located in Jackson, Mississippi at 1230 Raymond Road, located at the famous Jackson State University's E-Center. 1230 Raymond Road, Jackson, Mississippi. And this company, Action Leadership Institute, is a company that is focusing, and has been for over 15 years, business ventures, public and private. They also help people with 501c3 organizations. They teach individuals and groups how to write grants, how to put business plans together. They also teach individuals and groups how to put business operating agreements together. And of course, their main concern, and one of the largest things they do on a daily basis, is help people with wills, life estates, and health care initiatives. And the last component of Action Leadership Institute is they have a speakers bureau. And you call Action Leadership Institute, they will send someone to your church, your school, your family reunion, or your community organization, and give you a speech on how you can change your life, your status, and your community in 30 or 60, 90 days. And all you have to do is contact those folks at 601-201-1957 or email them at clu369@gmail.com. So today, since I will start off by giving you general information about the problems and concerns of black people, I'm just going to be very specific with you and give you these things and let you know, folks, that sometimes you just have to think about your situation and do something about it. Now let's start off with your education and training. Too many black people throughout the world have been brainwashed to believe that they need a 4-year college degree to do anything. And I'm going to show you during this presentation that this so-called idea that every black person ought to get a college degree is something that is killing thousands of black people in America and millions throughout the world. The first thing that you must consider, ladies and gentlemen, and parents specifically, that if you have a child and he does not have the skills to compete, nor do you have the funds to put your child in a situation where he's going to be competing with people that have money and have what we call advanced educational skills, you're almost wasting your time to force your child to get in a situation where he's going to be competing with students and others that have tutoring or had tutoring from kindergarten through college, that put them in a position where they always got the top scholarship, the top internship, the top school, all of those things. And your child might get in there through a squeeze, but he's most certainly usually not going to be able to finish those 4 years because of some of the problems they're going to address right now. One thing you want to do, folks, now you're not going to want to hear this, is that when you put your child or encourage them to go into one of these 4-year institutions and get a degree, you know you don't have the money you need. The average college now that has any strong rating is going to cost you from $40,000 to $75,000 to $80,000 a year. And I don't know anywhere that you can get that much money in a student loan to get a person through a college for 4 years. So the first thing and the first problem most of the black students are going to have in America and worldwide is that if they start off at a senior college, they're going to have a student loan problem. The poorer you are, the more money you can get. And then when you get more money in a student loan, or as much as you can get, that is not enough to finish your educational requirement. Even on a semester basis, you have to do 2 other things. And those 2 things are, with the loan, the student loan, in many cases you're going to have to get a job on campus. They call that work study. And then you're going to have to get a 10 or 15, 20-hour job working in the community, usually making something around or just a little higher than the minimum wage. While your competitor, who has been tutored well, who has the funds to get in school on a scholarship or an internship, or who can get money from his parents, and he or she doesn't have to work, they're just going to ride through those classes, get all the good benefits, be in the leadership positions in the sororities and fraternities and school activities. They'll be the president of this and that, and you will be working day and night, making those C's and D's and every now and then a B. And this is not where you want to be, parents. And I'm going to give you something later on that you must consider if you want to be competitive and attend to your college education later. You want to stop focusing on these 4-year college degrees when you can't afford to do it. It's just good for some poor people and those that don't have the opportunity to get that so-called higher education to feel that they have a child in college trying to get that 4-year degree. They want to talk about it with their peers. They want their child to say that I am in college. What is your major? Business administration, entrepreneurship, physical education, social work, psychology. All of those areas, folks, require a master's degree, and that's at least 2 years beyond a 4-year degree. And many require what we call a certification. So that means you finish a 4-year degree in some of those areas, and in order to get a job making the top salary, you're going to have to get some kind of credential or pass some kind of test. So I say then, that is something you shouldn't consider if you're not ready for that financially, educationally. You ought to consider what I call the second tier education opportunity. When you finish high school, and folks, you have a ACT test score, the American College Test score, of anywhere from 15 to 19, you are not doing yourself a favor if you get involved in a 4-year college. You need to start, folks, in a community college. You still have a good status. If you get in a good community college, they will have usually anywhere from 15 to 18 students per teacher. They have all kinds of remedial programs and labs and study groups that they put together that can help you if you have those low scores on that American College Test, 16 or 19. Now, of course, some of you with 19 on the American College Test can get in a senior college. But I want to tell you now, you have too many deficiencies. To start off, you don't know very much about the literature, the history of those areas that you are studying. You're working sometimes 40 hours a week in 2 or 3 different jobs. And you don't know what you're going to do. And you get to the point where you want to give up. And many do. I've seen it happen for 30 years. You get in a senior college or a community college and you don't feel that you are able to compete. The first thing you're going to do is drop some of your classes. You're going to drop 1 or 2, end up with 6 or 8 hours for that semester. And you're not thinking about how that's going to hurt you later on. So when you're in that community college, folks, sometimes you might look at what they are offering in what we call the vocational, technical, and technical high-tech area and get one of those areas that does not require a 2-year degree. We call them an associate arts degree. You get into a vocational or technical area where you can get some type of certification in 6, 12, or 18 months. And then while you're doing that, you get you some minor courses in the 2-year AA program where you get your associate arts degree. And of course, if you want to stay an extra semester or 2 and leave with an AA degree, you can do that. At least you have certification where you can make from $15 to $30 or $40 an hour. But if you have just an associate of arts degree and no VOTEC skill or no high technology skill certification, you're going to make about $10 to $12 an hour. That's not going to make you competitive in this society. Now, once you do this, you leave that community college, you have worked, you have had a chance to go to the labs, you have had opportunity to get all kinds of free tutoring. You have a low-class teacher ratio. Your teacher will be available 2 and 3 times a week to work with you. And then that's when a smart student will transfer to the 4-year college. Think about it now, 4-year college, and if you do what I've just told you and worked hard, you then can probably get a scholarship to go to the 4-year college because you've done so well at your community college, you have a certification, you have a degree, and many times if you graduate from a community college that has what we call an acceleration degree certificate or agreement with a senior college, you can automatically enroll in those colleges on a scholarship, full or part-time, and you're ready then to compete, and you'll probably do your last 2.5 years and have what we call good status. But now if you don't do that, and you start off in those 4-year colleges, here's what's going to happen to you. It's going to take 6 to 8 years to graduate from the college part, not the university part, with a master's degree. 4 years gone, you're still not out. 5 years have passed, you're not out. Usually 6 to 8 years, you end up with that 4-year college degree. And then you have two problems. One, you're in debt. You owe 40 to 50, 75, $100,000. You've gotten all the student loan you could get. You borrowed all kind of money from your parents and others. You have worked too much, and your grade now is very, very low. You have less than a B average. And I'm telling you, if you have a BS degree from a college or university, and you've been in school 6 to 8 years, I guarantee you, you're not going to be competitive with those students that work through that institution in 4 or 5 years. You're not going to be able to get that job. You're not going to have that grade point average of a B or better. You won't get that interview to get in that internship program. I mentioned this some time ago on one of the shows. You always want to be in a position where you're competitive. And if you start off in the right place and get the support you need, we call them, they're called support systems, in these educational institutions, sometimes partnering with community organizations, you can be competitive. So folks, just because your child is not in a 4-year institution, don't feel bad. And you want him to do that because you didn't do it. You were not able to do it. You didn't know how important it was to finish high school and get in a certification program. A lot of you all were told by your parents, just get you a high school diploma and go to college. And that's why a lot of you dropped out. You didn't understand what the national trends were that will keep you poor. And that's what we're going to talk about. When you start working in a situation and you don't have the skills to make what we call a livable wage, where you have to work 2 or 3 jobs and you have a college degree, you're going to find some national trends that's going to be very prohibitive. One thing you're going to have is a lot of high tariffs on the national level. You're going to find that the countries that are working and trying to get their goods to America or from America, they're going to be charged a lot of excessive fees, taxes, and all kinds of money for those products that they are shipping to and from your country. And then you're going to have to pay more. You're going to have something called monopoly happen, where you're going to have a lot of the big companies buying small companies. That's going to increase the prices and cut down on job opportunities. So when that starts happening, when the prices start increasing, the big companies buying the small ones, you who have a B average or less, going to lose your job. And then you're going to find that there are going to be some wage freezes. You're going to have less competition. You're going to be out looking for another job. But if you were smart, as I just told you, and you started off at that community college somewhere, whether it's public or private, and you left there with a AA degree, an Associate of Arts degree, and a certification in technology, you then will be in a more competitive position than the senior college person that had the good job for 3 or 4 years before the big companies bought their small competitor, and they lost their job. They out there looking, and they don't have the training you have. This is the new workplace, folks. Technology development companies. If you have a certification in almost any kind of technology that deals with automation and robots, you are not likely to be in poverty for very long, because you're going to make $50 to $75 to $125,000 a year, and that person that finished college with a A average, with just a 4-year degree, and he accomplished that in 4 years, he's lost his job, and he was only making $35,000, and here you are making $100 and some thousand with a certification in technology, and you have what we call a 2-year Associate of Arts degree. Now, when this happened, you're going to have a lot of rioting and what I call disharmony and discord in your nation or in your country. Even in America, when things start getting tight, companies start going out of business, when they have the wage freeze, and a lot of people are not being competitive anymore because they're not in the workplace. When you have that degree in technology and you're able to deal with automation and robots and do all kinds of things that can keep you working, you don't have to worry about all those demonstrations and all that domestic conflict that's going to be happening in your city or in your state or in your nation, where people are just upset. They are marching and fighting and killing each other on a small scale because they are suffering economically, socially, politically, because when things get real tight, the politicians start pulling their forces together, and they look out for themselves first and make it even worse for you. And that's when they start working with the big companies. The big companies will have a tendency to buy off the elected and what I call appointed officials. You will find that the big banks, for instance, will say, well, we are not going to work with these workers that have lost their jobs. They don't have the money in the bank to qualify for a loan, so they're not going to get loans. And here you are, thinking that you were doing well for 5 or 10 years, and now you don't have a job, you can't go to the bank to get a loan, and that's going to get you in a position where you will get in poverty. You will be poverty-stricken. Now, what's going to happen to that 4-year college graduate that has not worked in 2 or 3 years, other than a little part-time, making the minimum wage, $8, $10, $12 an hour? Now you're about 30 years of age, 30 to 35, to work sometime after college. You bought a house. You bought 2 or 3 cars. You were thinking about starting a family, and many of you started a family. Of course, you can't feed them. You can't keep your house. You can't keep your 2 or 3 cars. So you're going to lose them. You can't go to the bank to borrow money to keep yourself afloat. You're not going to do that. So therefore, from making what we call a livable wage, now you're in poverty. You can't go to the bank. And guess what's going to happen to you? You're going to have to get deeper in poverty, because you can get some money, but it's not going to be at the right place. It's going to be at 3 places that I want to warn you about again, and hopefully you won't end up at them. And that is these loan companies. They have these loan companies, I mentioned this a few weeks ago, that just smile when you walk in the door. You're looking good. You have a nice car. You pull up in that parking lot, and I told you last week, when they see you coming in there, they start smiling. They know that you used to be a middle-class person. They can tell the way you walk and the size of your car that you probably broke, but you're just looking good. and you walk up in there and you want to borrow some money. You don't want much, just $500. They give it to you in 5 minutes. Then you come back next 2 or 3 months, pay as much as you can, and they tell you, well, now you have a contract, my good friend. You have to pay so much a month. And you say, well, I can't do it. But they say, well, don't worry about that. Say, I see that nice car you have out there. Just give me your title and run down to the place there and make a key. Matter of fact, they'll send you in a back room and make a key for you for your car. They'll keep one. They'll keep the title and give you your original key, and you leave out of there with another $500 or $1,000. So now you got 2 loans there. 2 loans. Now some of you are saying, man, I don't believe this happening. It's happening all over the world, and especially in America. All over the world, where you were working, you were a middle-class person, and now you're poverty-stricken. You're getting in a position where you owe everybody you see, and you're going to owe them for the rest of your life. So here you are at a loan company, owe them $500 or $600, paying the minimum wage. Then you give them your car, give them your title, and you're struggling to keep that car because you want to look good in the community. You don't want to lose that apartment, which you're going to lose in 6 to 8 months. You don't want to move back to your mother's house or your grandparents' house. Of course you don't want to do that, but it's going to happen to you, because when you go to this next level where you're going to get a little money, and this is what I advise you to stay away from, but you're not going to do it. You're always going to go to the loan company. You're going to go to the title companies and give that title to your car and give them your key. But the one that is worse is the pawn shop. Now this pawn shop is a predator that will ruin your life forever, because once you get in debt and you have things that you can't pay for, you start going to the pawn shop and start selling things. Sell some of the things out of your car, for instance. You have a nice speaker system in your car worth about $1,500. You go to the pawn shop and they'll give you $400 for it. You have an expensive iPhone. You sell that to them. It costs $1,800. You let them have it for $100. Then you start selling other things around the house. You start buying stolen goods and taking that to the pawn shop. And here you are, a good person. That's what you call yourself, a good person. Now you go to the service station and you see people selling computers and TVs, phones and jewelry, all kinds of things out of the back of their cars or trucks. Or you go online and buy stuff you know is stolen products. You know it. You know it's against the law, but you buy it anyway. You take it on to the pawn shop. And the pawn shop, can buy stolen goods. They pretend that they don't know it and have you to sign a document saying it's not stolen. They know you're lying. And then when the police come around checking them out, they show them a document that you signed it. That is, they were your products that you got that pawn money on. So folks, when you look at something like this, you're going to say, now what is a democracy? Why isn't the government looking out for me? And why have they changed the policy so where I used to be in a position where I could be a competitor, and now I'm here with all this education and training, and I'm begging? Folks, it is because you made the wrong decision. You tried to start off too big. You didn't want to start at the lower level and move to the higher level in society. You've just been what I call brainwashed to believe that you have to get more education than you need, starting off at these senior colleges. Now, I have been criticized for years about these people that start off in these senior colleges that can't afford to be there, nor are they academically prepared to be there, they tell me that you shouldn't say that. Why are you encouraging people not to attend a 4-year college? I'm doing that because I know what's going to happen to you if you're not qualified academically, nor do you have the money to compete. And keep in mind, when you go to a place where you're not going to be able to compete and you got to work 2 or 3 jobs and get all the loans you can, and then some of you get the loan, I told you, you get the work study on campus 15 or 20 hours a week, then you work 10 or 15 hours at one of the local places in the community. You have no time to study. And that's why you drop out, or if you do squeeze yourself along the way and you get out in 6 to 8 years, you're still going to be disadvantaged. Now, why is this happening to you, folks? This is a world problem. These are world issues. And that's why I'm not too concerned about what happens to you in your state or in your nation, which we call America. I'm concerned about what happened to you throughout the world. It's not about local, state, and national issues anymore. It's about international designs that are being put in operation to control the world and eventually have what we call a one world government. Some say that's not going to ever happen. They already said, and they were proven wrong, that we are not going to have United States of America, of Asia, of Africa, of Europe. In some of those places, they have that now. They don't have a United Nations in Africa, but they do have it in Europe, because the Europeans are guaranteeing to the Africans that you don't have anything to worry about. We're going to take care of you. So don't you have one nation, one Africa, one African military, one African bank, one African university system, one African, what we call, economic development plan? You don't need that. We are going to help you, Africa. We are the great European nations that used to own you. We were physically there. And you got mad with us. You made us leave. But we made you sign documents that put you in a situation worse than you were when we were ruling you direct. Now we have our hitchmen in office, and we are paying them to rule you, and you are worse off now than you were when you were a colony. You're just looking like you're in charge, but you're not. And this is why I want to tell you, you find that when you get in this situation, you have to look at the matter from a world issue. And some of you don't believe the next information that I'm going to share with you. And that is that only about 1% of the top leaders in the world, less than 1% of the top people in the world make all the rules. Less than 1%. And when I say all, I'm saying A-L-L, all of them. 1% make 100% of the rules. Now guess what happens? You have that 1% making all the rules. They are sitting around making the highest salaries. And then there's another little group that were able to finish college and universities throughout the world. And they are those hard-working people. That's about 9% of them. I'm talking about worldwide, that working for the 1%. And they carry out all the rules and the mandates. They are in government. They are running the big factories and so forth. They are making themselves happy because they are working for the 1%. The rulers that are sitting around working 4 and 5 hours a day, that are spending their money, investing their money, and got that 9% carrying out the rules. Now those folks get paid well. $100 to $400,000 and $500,000 a year. But here, where you fall in, folks, you fall into the 90% worldwide, where you are doing 90% of the work. You're paying taxes, and you save less than your parents saved. Less now. More degrees, working more, owe more, don't own anything, and that 9% that's making the rules for the 1%, that's 10%. And here you are working like a slave, paying the taxes, in debt, and every time you look around, they are consolidating their forces because that 1% and that 9% going to keep themselves in positions where they're going to make the money and make the rules and keep you as an economic slave. Now, a lot of you don't believe it. You say, well, I'm going to get in that 9%. No, you're not going to get in that 9% and get one of those top jobs because you did not finish with the top degree from one of these top universities because you didn't have parents and others that had the resources to get you there or were able to maneuver, whether they had the resources or not, and get you in a position where you were not qualified for through an affirmative action program. If you don't have that going for you, you're not going to get ahead. And when I say affirmative action, I'm not talking about affirmative action for black folks or poor people. I have to tell you, and research will show this, the people throughout the world that get more of the affirmative action are the top 10%. That 9% that's working for the 1%, they get all the affirmative action in the world in all spheres of influence. Education, politics, in the banks, working at the big top colleges, universities, and colleges. But the 9% is their suffering. And the others looking at you and smiling and saying things getting ready to change here in the world. We got to put some more screws on this 9%. We'll have to start laying them off. And we're going to keep them quiet by giving them a little extra tax break here because we don't want them demonstrating and marching and closing down governments and businesses. We want to keep them happy, just give them enough to pay some of the bills, and if they can't pay them, we'll forgive them for 2 or 3 months. We got to keep these fools happy around here working, because we don't want them to have us in a position where we can't work. And this, folks, will keep you so stressed out until when you know anything, your job not going to help you very much because you owe so many people. You get depressed. I'm talking about this 90% now. And here you are, you're going to start using more drugs, drinking more alcohol. You know who you are. Some of you looking at me right now and listening to me. You know you can't go to work without taking a shot of marijuana or a dose of marijuana. And some of you talking about, well, I got this medical problem. I got me some legal marijuana. And you bragging about it. If you have a legal problem where you have to take dope or excessive drugs, you need to go somewhere and get some professional help, folks. Or go to a psychiatrist. If you have to drink liquor every day just to get yourself moving, you have to admit to yourself that you are an alcoholic. If you get up every day and on Thursdays and Fridays you feel that you can't make it until Friday at 4:30 or 5 o'clock, and you start thinking about, you get more depressed. You start thinking about suicide. You start thinking about those kids you have that are worse than you were when you were coming along. They are not doing anything. Then you think about the fact that you are 50 to 60 years of age, not old enough to retire, can't afford to retire. You still have all these debts, and you don't ever see how you're going to pay your house off or not have a car note, and then you get into that state of depression, and your next thing then is serious mental illness. And folks, when this happened to you, I'm talking about this 90%, you are going to find that you are not going to be considered a good, stable American or a good, stable citizen of the world. This top 10%, this 9%, and this 1%, now those guys and girls are going to be able to go and get the psychiatrists to help them. They are going to be able to go to these institutions and stay 30, 90 days or 6 months and get off drugs and alcohol or get that free medicine that's going to keep them from going to prison when they get to be a drug addict. You won't get it. You're but going to prison. You're going to go to jail 5, 10, or 15 years if you get caught with dope 2 or 3 times. They are not. They're going to get that treatment and go to the hospital and lay up in there and enjoy life. So I'm telling you, folks, when you start looking at who is running the world, we're about done, don't have but a few minutes left. I want you to look at this and see what the 90% and that 1% is going to be doing. And as I conclude, when things get that point, to the point where the 9% that's doing all the work for the ruling class, which is 1% of the people, when they start getting threatened, they're going to start wars throughout the world. And then you're going to hear a lot of rumors of wars because this ruling class, this 1% and 9% that's working for the 1%, going to then create situations where they're going to keep their money coming because they're going to start a war somewhere. And they're going to start looking at who is running the world. And they will look at the leaders that they call rogue leaders, those that'll do anything, take all kind of bribes. You can pay some leaders and country rulers to start wars, fighting against each other. And then there's this 9% and 1% going to get together, and they're going to sell weapons to both sides at the same time so they can generate more funds in their big companies. And a good example of this is this Israeli and Palestinian conflict is going on right now. The USA, the United States of America, and the European, who created this situation, making more money today of wars than they are of manufacturing. I'm talking about that 9 and 1%, the 10% of the people of the world. They're making billions of dollars because they are killing and punishing people all over the world just to make money. Because if the United States or the European nations give money to the people that are fighting, they know they're going to need more weapons, more airplanes, more bombs, more personnel. And guess who's going to make those? Those countries that's giving them money to these nations. They're going to get that money back, and they're still fighting. And when those conflicts get to the point where they're going to be resolved, the 10%, that 9% and 1%, going to create more conflicts. You're going to hear about rumors of wars then. And in 6 months or a year, something else going to pop up. And I'm going to conclude by saying, your education and training and the way you position yourself, whether you poor, rich, or in between, will determine your destiny from birth to death. And if you don't start off competing in a positive manner when you're young and get yourself trained so you can have some kind of credentials that's going to keep you working in a so-called capitalistic system somewhere in the world, you'll be fine. But if you're not, you're going to be in that poor group. You're going to be fighting in these wars. You're going to be suffering. You're going to stay in debt until you die. And when you stay in debt until you die, you're going to find your children will be worse off than you are. Now that's bad, folks. That's bad. But since I know I'm right about it, I just want to tell you, you need to start organizing yourselves. Organize as an individual. Organize, parents, for your children and get them moving in the right direction. Then you can be part of your community. You can be working to make things change on the local level where you're in the majority. And I want to say I'll be back next week. I might come back Wednesday this week. As a matter of fact, I know I will. And we'll do what I call part 2 of this series in one way or the other, because I'm going to show you how the churches can get involved and cause some of these problems not to exist. Some of you don't believe it. I'm going to prove to you that the churches throughout the world, and especially in America, have the power to rule the 9% that's working for the 1% and cause peace and harmony throughout the world. And they can start doing this in 30, 60, or 90 days. Organize. Don't criticize the human enemies of mankind and their financial supporters. See you Wednesday. Goodbye.